friends beyond binary, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. I guess technically I'm just wearing a shorts and a t-shirt, but it is kind of my pajamas or my pre-bed clothing. But I was also, I guess, pre-bed clothing or clothing you sleep in your bed in or clothing you sleep. But I was thinking like pajamas is like one word, right? But then it got shortened to PJs, which the S is lowercase for whatever that is, multiple or what, I don't know. First of all, isn't it a pajama? Or is it top, like, because what if you're in a one-piece pajama? Like, is it like, so why is, there's a question, and someone will give me the right answer. Why are pajamas plural? So anyway, that's the kind of questions I'm asking here. Breaking news, have no idea about anything. And they'll state, and you say, why, where did it, well, because you deserve a good night's sleep. Your sleep is important. This is a silly show here to keep you company and take your mind off of stuff so you could get the sleep you need and deserve. And I'm here to let you know that. Then we'll talk about some stuff about the show. Then there'll be an intro, and then there'll be a bedtime story. And I'm so glad you're here because this is a special, special episode, 1111. So what do you say? What do I do next? These are a couple ways I'm able to do it for you free twice a week. All right, everybody, this is Scoots here, and this is it's a new episode, obviously, if you're listening. But this is a new approach. I don't even know how this is going to go. But usually, I think it's been a while. I don't know if we've done, what do you call them even? Like a place marking episode or bookend. It's not a bookend episode. But this is episode 1111, or it's supposed to be. But I'm recording this. There's a lot of times I'm surprised. So I'm going to kind of talk about, it's a wish episode, because I think you're supposed to make wishes at 1111. Now, unfortunately, it's not 2011, and this won't come out on 1111, but it will. It is episode 1111, or 1111. I think, but maybe we passed 1,000 episodes a while ago. So what I'm going to do is run through some wishes I have, maybe run through a little bit of the history of the podcast as related to some of my wishes, and then do on the back half of the episode, some listeners took the time to participate, and so we'll see how that goes. Okay, so I guess my wish is for you as a listener right now. If you're listening to this is really what I wish for you. And when I say I wish for you, I hope deeply, I yearn for you to feel valued and seen. And, and I guess maybe to spread that to other people and make them feel valued and seen. And yeah, it's reflective too, because I that's the person I want to be. Is someone that feels valued and seen by making other people feel valued and seen. So that's a wish I have, a desire I have for all of you that are listening right now. And for you to feel safe, at least in this moment, or some sense of safety, whether it's this podcast being a port in the storm for you, or that you just develop this podcast or something else as part of your bedtime routine, to create a, kind of sense of comfort and a safe space, where ideally you could get the sleep you need. I mean, that's really what this show is about. And that goes into wishes I repeat every episode. Like, I want this podcast to be there for you so you could get the rest you need so that your life is more manageable. And I probably already talked about it in the intro, but I mean, a lot of us listening know how that feels. And that's kind of my deep desire for you is that you get the rest you need on a regular basis, at least better than baseball. Like, what do they hit? Like 33, a top baseball player hits like 300 or something. So 3 out of 10. I'd like it to be around 7 out of 10. That's about when my sleep now with a regular wind down routine. Sometimes it's 8 out of 10 nights I get a good night's sleep. And then if your life becomes manageable, that you could just be there and be present in your life, live your life, take part in it, and start to flourish. That's really what I desire for all of you. So those are my wishes for you as a listener, and all those things that come along with all that stuff, and, all that stuff that happens in between all that stuff. And, I know life isn't easy. Being human's not easy. And not being able to sleep on top of that is tough. And I know that also, speaking from experience, I don't always feel like I'm the person I want to be, right? And that kind of goes into some of my wishes around the podcast. And for the future of the podcast is that really, I make the show, I manage anyway, is that my fears and my need for certainty or my default behaviors don't get in the way of the podcast, because that's one of the biggest challenges of the podcast is me. Because it can be really hard for me, just like I kind of said, for all of you, my desire too is to feel okay and trust things are going to work out and not try to force solutions or run around like that little chicken that's in the books, thinking, oh, why isn't this happening, or why isn't this happening, or I need certainty, I need to know it's going to be okay, or I need this many, that gets in the way of me doing my best job, and also closes me off from change and saying, oh, okay, well, maybe this has to change with the show, or maybe this has to change with the show. It's I'm not able to see, my vision is only focused on, the non-positive outcomes, and stuff like that. So I really have a wish that I keep growing and I can stay out of the way of the podcast and know that if I'm just doing, I don't know, this is the hardest part, honestly, is to be okay, if I do the best job I can making the podcast to put people to sleep, and it puts people to sleep, that it'll be okay. And that enough, that the rest of the stuff outside of that, which is under my control, will happen as long as I'm trying to, create a safe place and put you to sleep, that everything else, if I do my best, that things are going to be okay. And my desire is for me to get to a place where at least I'm, just like I kind of talked about, I think I'm in the baseball player zone now. It's if I, and I'm not an all-star, so I don't know if I'm, I don't know if I'm in the major leagues where I say, okay, 2 out of 10 times I can trust things are going to be okay. And, so let's see. Let's go into the history of the podcast a little bit, because this is a major... 1111 itself is just a symbolic number. But wow, the show has been coming out now for 9 years, and we're about to enter the 11th year of making the show. Wait, so is it 10 years? So I started the podcast really, I don't know, I won't go into I don't know where I'm going with this. But yeah, started the show. The show started coming out in the feed in 2013 in the fall, right around now, October, I think. So let's see, 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Yeah, that's 9 years. And 10 calendar years of making it. Is that right? I don't know. 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. Yeah. So, wow, 11 calendar years coming up. Holy cow. Really, I had that's hard for me to process. Probably, so let's steer around that, because then I start to get the old forlorn comes up. But yeah, when I started making this show, way back then, it had been something I'd put off for years and years and years. If you're new to the show, you might not know that, but maybe you could relate to having that creative idea and then being like, no, that's not a good idea, because that was years and years and years before. I actually heard from somebody, I don't even know what year it was, 2007, that they said they found in my family Is that right? I don't know. I have to look like a test episode or something. But that was even before, I don't know. Was that before podcast? That doesn't make sense. But I don't know. But so, I don't know. At some point, I started making the show because just other stuff. I said, okay, let's just try as a hobby. I had no experience in audio or audio engine, none of that stuff. So just in case you're in that place where you're like, I can't do it, I can relate. And I guess that's another wish. I wish for you to, not to try, but to have that love and to have what you need to get over that hump, because it's tough. It was tough for me, and there was a lot of things in the way of that. And so eventually I started making the show, and I had a full-time job, and it was just a hobby and an experiment, really. I said, well, could I have this idea, a podcast that puts people to sleep, where someone tells you bedtime stories you don't really listen to. And I think even at the time, even the show had to develop. This is the kind of end product I kind of had in mind, in my heart at least, was, I don't know, a fun show that you could listen to, but you don't really listen to, with stories. And so would anybody, I know I would like that, and I know I've encountered other people that might like that. Can I follow through on it? I mean, that was mostly my concern at the time. Wasn't even, will it work? Because I guess part of me, to be honest, I was like, I think this is a decent idea that I've been avoiding for years and years and years. And I think it will work but I don't know if I'm the one to make it work. I don't know if I can, I don't have a history of following through on stuff. And so that was my biggest commitment. And I mean, I had read stuff that it takes 3 years to really, and this was back in 2013, to get a podcast to know if you're going to have an audience or anything, or anybody to listen, or that it's just do it as a hobby for 3 years, basically. And so then I said, well, could I make it for 2 years, I think? And then there was a couple other facts that were useful to me, was that podcasts, and again, this was 2013 numbers, but podcasts that record episode 1, only 50% of those record episode 2. And then podcasts that record episode 2, only 50% of those record episode 7 or 8. And then podcasts that record episode 7 or 8, only 50% of those record episode 25 or 20 or 18 or something, or 12. And so I kind of set those as my goals, even though when I was making it, I didn't think I could keep following through, or part of me was afraid. And again, there's another wish I have for all of you listening, is that you could have that place and that encouragement, or not feel alone, to be like, hey, there's somebody else out there that feels like stopping, or this isn't going to work out. And that's not to say that stuff doesn't work out, which I guess I don't know how long I'll go on about the history of the podcast, or maybe this will end up being 2 different episodes. I don't know. But what was my point? Giving up, stopping. Oh, that's not to say that there isn't times to change or to give up or change direction, because the podcast wasn't the first thing I tried, right? And I think that's also important when I talk to people one-on-one, is this might be the thing you make before the thing, before the thing you make before the thing you make. Because I had a couple other things that I felt strongly about that didn't work out in creatively, but that led, I think those had to, but that I worked on really hard for a while, years. And that led to the podcast. Also, I guess one part of the early podcast development that a lot of people know about, but not everybody, maybe if you're newer, is I also had to get sober. I got sober, and this has nothing to do with the podcast timing wise. The podcast didn't help get me sober, but it just happened that the end of my drinking career, when it really had to end, came just a couple months after making the podcast. And I mean, there was a couple things that were clear that the podcast probably helped me a little bit on the way. Was one, like I really wanted to make the podcast, but that was getting in the way of it. Like even like, because I was just like, I don't want to get too big into like addiction and stuff, but like, I was constantly thinking about it. So I'd be like, okay, let me just put it okay, let me just get if you record this podcast episode, then you can do whatever you want afterwards. But then I said, well, let me just have a couple then, and then I'll record the podcast episode. But I wasn't the kind of person that, like once I turned on, it was just, I mean, when I need to make the podcast, I need to be fully available. And even one or two drinks immediately, I was thinking about the third or the fourth one. But it was also like something in me changed where I wasn't and again, this isn't based on chemistry. It's just based on, could you say, well, that's only like just something in me changed. And so my whatever creative stuff about the podcast wasn't there anymore or whatever I was numb to it. So whatever. I mean, that was just one thing I noticed. It wasn't necessarily the stuff that pushed me over the hump, but it might have been one little tiny weight on the scales. So anyway, I started the podcast in October. I actually stopped drinking in like the end of December or the end of the year, 2013. And that did give me a lot of extra time. So in sobriety, the podcast, I suddenly had a lot more time. Like even anyway, I don't want to get too deep. Well, because I was making the podcast late at after work at night on the train, to and from work, walking to work because I didn't have a car, listening to the podcast episodes on my lunch, any breaks I had. I was working on the podcast, and a lot of that time, some of that time would have been hungover or late nights or after work. And again, I was a co-parent at the time. So it's like, the nights that I had my daughter, if I got home from work at 5:30, realistically that's 5 hours I could work on the podcast. And that would have been 5 hours. I would have been doing other stuff, where I wasn't, creatively, present. So then I started making the show and, it basically became like a full-time hobby very quickly because the podcast started with shorter episodes. And I realized I don't know how long it took me to realize that. I'd have to look back at the episode lengths, but, where I realized, okay, this isn't going to work. The episodes need to be over an hour, or I'd like them to be. And I also started off writing every single episode ahead of time on the train going to and from work. So in the podcast was coming out 3 times a week. Again, I didn't know, it was just an experiment and it was based on, I wish the podcast would come out 5 times a week. And I said, well, if I work every waking minute that I'm not at work, I could get it out 3 times a week. And then I was writing, at first I was writing 3 different 3 different fictional stories, I think, on the train. And then we would alternate between those 3. And then I was like, wait a second, let's just go with 1. So then it was like, okay, let's just do After the Glass Slipper. I think might have been our first series that we just went to full time. And then out of that became okay, writing 3 episodes a week is nearly impossible. Maybe I could write 1 episode a week. And again, this was when, I was literally, taking the train home, and then, writing the episodes, recording them, then editing them, and then putting them out the next day. There was, no lead time. And again, it was just a different thing. The show's a different level of quality. And really wasn't a big audience. I know there's some people that are listening now that have been listening the whole time, but for the most part, it was and there were no expectations. There wasn't a prior body of work to say, oh, this isn't this thing. It was something that was being developed. And so I did that for a while. And I'm trying to think of the historical markers of the show, making it to episode 100 or, 8, whatever. My biggest mistake was making it to episode 25 and then just thinking, okay, let's just make it to 100, I think till a year. And then it was like, okay, let's just make it to 2 years once we made it to a year. And I wish, looking back, I have a wish, or anybody else to say, well, why don't you check in with yourself every month and see if it's sustainable to keep doing something or what changes maybe you might want to make to take better care of yourself. Because that's honestly like a wish I have for people is like, like nothing came from me overdoing it. There was none of the success. I don't think that's like a lesson to be taken. It was like I was overdoing it, and it was probably a part of my personal situation and replacing one thing with another thing or whatever. I don't know what it was, but I would say, because again, the success of podcast actually came when I pared down to 2 episodes, and which I thought was one of the biggest setbacks. It was devastating to me, and that was just because we didn't have the support to make 3 episodes. And it was like, this doesn't again, it was like, this is only because you're doing it. Like there isn't a support there if it was someone else doing it. So let's just do 2 episodes. So like times I've cut back on stuff has actually been the times that the podcast has moved forward and improved in quality, but that's ahead of ourselves anyways. So yeah, at some point I started, trying to find someone to edit the show. I found Chris Posterson. Then we started a Patreon, and I said, okay, if I could bring in enough money through Patreon to pay him to edit 1 episode a week, then 2 episodes a week, I think that's where we hit a standstill, not on the Patreon, but it was like, okay, those were the goals around the Patreon. And that was another mistake I made. And again, kind of go back to my fears and need for certainty was and if you listen to early episodes, maybe you hear it, instead of asking for the value of what people were getting out of the podcast, to say, hey, if you're listening to this podcast 3 times a week, 3 new episodes, it's probably worth $10 or $20 to you, maybe, or $5 if you can afford it. And that was my original plan, but I fell into a delusion based on fear and unrealistic need for certainty. And I changed everything that Patreon and all the data at the time said this was a bad idea. Because you can only get a tiny, tiny percentage of your audience to support you, just realistically. So that's why I say, well, if you do a tiny percentage of people are willing to support the show, $10 or $20 a month, everybody can benefit from that. But I said, no, Sleep With Me is, so many people fall asleep to Sleep With Me. It's different. So I think we could get a lot of people at those levels, but also a ton of people at $1 a month. But the numbers aren't based on the number or the amount of money you're asking for. It's just more or less a fixed number. And some people will say that's not true, but I've never seen the data to back it up. Like, I'd be impressed, if someone was getting 4, 5, or 6, 7% of their audience, maybe they had, I'd say, man, that's absolutely amazing. But for most shows, it's like 1% or less of people are willing to pay to support the show, no matter if it's $1 or $20. I mean, you can't get 1% of people to support you at $20, but it's really hard to get more than 1% of people, no matter how low you're asking. And you can eventually get up slowly above 1%, but I've never seen it above 2% maybe. Or I don't know. This isn't a good time to discuss analytics because I'm not good at that. But so I was like, okay, we'll be able to get 10% of people to give $1, and then 1 or 2% of people to give $5, $10, or $20. And that'll pay for the editing and eventually mean that maybe eventually I could get paid to work on the podcast a little bit, at least equal to part of what I was getting paid at my day job. And that was a mistake, a big, big mistake. and it set the podcast back probably for a while because I stuck to it for a while until some listeners, I think Wendy and Julie are two of the people I'm thinking of, reached out to me and said, what are you doing? Like, the podcast is not worth $1. I mean, maybe someone casually listened once, but I rely on it every single night to fall asleep, or I rely on it 4 nights or 5 nights a week. So I can hear in your voice, like you're letting your self-esteem get in the way, or your fear get in the way of asking for what you and your audience values the show at. And so eventually I changed patterns, and eventually the good news was we brought enough money to pay Posty twice a week for 2 episodes a week. And again, it wasn't that, it wasn't a financial thing. It was like, from other people's perspective, a freelancer, it's like, well, that's how much free time I have to do work on freelance. And eventually Posty started doing some super deluxe episodes. And then we found Carl W., who would edit an episode a week. And eventually I found out, like, with my day job and just like, okay, like, it needs sponsors. If I want to, like, I don't know, making the podcast sustainable, I don't know if I want to get caught up in that, to be honest with you. Because, again, it gets into my needs, get in the way of all this. And it's just confusing, like making something free and then giving it away, or having it be sponsor supported and listener supported. It's, especially for somebody like me, I guess it's a constant growth opportunity. So even talking about it, I'm kind of feeling like shut down a little bit. And I guess like, that's like, part of my growth is like saying, man, like, at the same time, like, as hard as it's been, I've been able to make the show and sustain the show. So my wish, I guess, is coming true right now is I really am grateful for that fact, that those people came in and supported the show. Some of you that are listening that have been there since the beginning. And I was able to pay Posty and then have Carl, and that helped, cleared up more creative space for the show. And then I was able to pay, for other stuff. And then I was able to, like, slowly cut back on my job. I don't know if I cut back over 2 years or a year. I can't remember anymore. But where between the kind of particularly at the time, the Patreon support and then the sponsor support, it was like I was able to save an emergency fund. That's what I did first. And then tried to figure out health insurance. And then, well, I guess I got practice doing that because it was like, okay, like, if I'm only working half time, I know how much I'm going to have to pay. I had to pay for half my insurance, I think. Maybe, or like once I went from 3/4 time to halftime, I don't know. But then when I was halftime at work, like working 20 hours a week, or 24, maybe, I can't remember. But whatever, like, where I was like, okay, then how much is like independent insurance going to cost me or whatever from, the California exchange. And then, yeah, then I was able to kind of transition from my job to working on the podcast full time, and eventually, like, try to trim the podcast to where it is sustainable, where I'm trying to be as healthy as I can and set a good example and be available and not overdo it, and ask for help and get help where I can, and pay people that are involved with the podcast. So I guess it comes back to wishes. Is like, in some sense, my wish came true. That I like said, what can I try to do? This idea will work? Yeah, and it worked because other people out there were willing to help, and they got something out of it, and it helped people, and it did help, like, make people feel less alone in the deep, dark night. And it's helped me feel less alone in the deep, dark night of my mind. You know what I'm saying? Like, so, yeah. But enough about me. Let's get to this listener, if I can find it. The listener wishes here. Okay. Let me see. Okay. So what's your wish? Oh, 54 comments. Cool. Oh, I lost it. Okay, there we go. All right, so let's start a bedtime story here where Susan, once upon a time, said, "My wish for sleep with me to be a reliable and secure way to Drew to make a nice living as long as he wants to be." And, yeah, that's something I wish too. It's like, and that sleep with me, I guess those are kind of the wishes I didn't share because it's like, yeah, be in other languages or maybe other people doing versions of it. Yeah, I don't know. But, and again, I guess that's like my part of it is my own perspective too. It's like, oh, I get to work on this show. Just trying to find that balance between, what's under my control and what isn't. Thanks, Susan. And Robert says, all those ones in a row look like hands knocking on a door. I'd like to see a new deep dive into collecting knocks as of someone rapping gently at my chamber door. Yeah, I think we have a couple I think we have a knock episode coming out. I don't know if we do. It's something knock related. Robert, and that's Knox. I explain it. I think it comes out in the holidays. Is of me and my dog Koa. We listen to recorded knocks as our hobby, and you find some of those shows in the archives. If you just search for KNOCKS, there should be a few in there. And then if you're a $10 or $20 patron, you definitely get access to all of them. Yeah, those are fun episodes. Janet would like Ray to meet and shawl Nana. I think they would make a lovely couple. Yeah, I guess, I don't think Ray, I think Ray kind of is an example. So Ray's my neighbor, and he comes on, does shows. We're getting ready to but I don't know if it'll come out before or after this. Ray is supposed to do a Halloween-themed show for us. So, yeah. And, so, yeah. And I don't know if, Nana doesn't really, I don't think Nana really fit. Nana's never had her own episode that I know of. Has she, though? I'm trying to think of what I recorded. It's hard for me because I record episodes 3 or 4 months out. And then this one is like, I'm recording it a little bit sooner. But, yeah, I mean, Nana does get some. Wait, I thought there was one with Nana in the title. Oh, yeah, Nana's, Bartlett's quoted Nana's quotations. Bartlett's book of quotations. Did that already come out? I don't think so, but that's scheduled, Janet. Pete says if you could do one page of an old toy catalog, yeah, we have a toy catalog episode. I think I replied to that. That was recorded, and that'll come out in the holiday season. And we've been doing those magic episodes, which are kind of similar. Charlotte asks, another random podcast time capsule episode where you pick episode titles at random and make up a story. Yeah, we did that, Charlotte, with one of the live shows, what year is it, 2022 live shows? Don't know if it was streamed or recorded, though, but I'll have to take a look. But, yeah, those are fun to use the old episode titles. Okay, then Steven says old catalog. We did do that. Buddy. Cat, that's from Cat. And Cat also even made a shirt that says that. And what would it be like if a few of the characters met up in a coffee shop? I don't even know. I don't know if I have a lot of the character. I don't know if I have the ability. Super Doll was one of the ones that taught me the limits of having, like that Sleep With Me is best when it's like a pair of characters interacting. But yeah, 2 characters could be at a coffee shop. I don't know if Bernie and Ray's, their voices are a little too similar, so it'd be confusing for people. And then it'd be funny to hear them commenting on how I've written their stories. It'd be funny for After the Glass Slipper, I think, Agatha and Lady Witchbeard. I'm sure they'd have a lot of comments about it. Lisa Michelle also knock, knock, knock. Shout out on a listener's door. Stanley wants to bring back Kiwi Shavers. Kiwi Shavers is, the podcast gets like, there's a negativity that comes our way on a regular daily basis. And I don't even know if it was that a public episode, but Kiwi Shavers was one of the most emails I've ever gotten, non-positive. Like always the non-positive stuff usually. Like we get regular nice stuff on a regular basis too, so it's not to say that, but the concentrated stuff is always non-positive, and that was one of the most non-positive ones. I think there was like only one or two other times where there was like a promo or for a show or something. Yeah, so Kiwi Shavers, Stanley will only make it back as a Patreon. I could work out a Patreon episode maybe next summer when I'm where Kiwi Shavers was. But Kiwi Shavers was just a Australian accented adventurer named Kiwi Shavers. And he had a saying, I'm trying to think, let's go. It was kind of like, let's go Kiwi Shavers. That was the kind of rhyme of it. I don't even know what the content was because I haven't listened to the episode in a long time, but it was a fun episode. I remember recording that episode and having tons of fun, but I don't think that's what most listeners, especially on the free feed, are looking for, is me having fun. So yeah. Let's see. Catalog idea. Wendy likes that. Maybe the Archie McPhee toy catalog. You have to download that and check it out. Yeah. Brittany gives a catalog. Shout out. Let's see. E. Margaret says appearance from Roy G. Biv Institute would be awesome. Yeah, it would be. I think all the holiday, I have to put that down maybe for 2023. Or I'm trying to think of what other things Roy G. Biv Institute. I mean, maybe we could do something about rainbows. But yeah, I think all of 2022, other than this episode and Ray's episode, is recorded. I think knock on wood. Oh, maybe a couple Nuns in Space episodes. Yeah, I think. But yeah, Reggie Biv, that's always interesting. Cornelia and Snow, like personal episodes. It's hard for me to know the personal episodes until they come out because I'm recording so much. But I think probably the Nana's book, I guess I don't have the list of episodes in front of me. They've been recorded, but I know we have like, so yeah, I don't know what I have coming up, but I'm sure there's personal episodes recorded. Heidi says maybe Ray reading a catalog. Maybe, maybe I'd have to take a look at that. I mean, Ray, see, I have one Ray episode scheduled to be recorded, and then Ray's Father's Day for next year is already recorded, for 2023. Stacy would love old holiday catalog, Christmas catalog. Let's see. Chris wanted access to all the old Game of Thrones episodes. Those are actually, Chris is a $10 patron, so they're actually in the $10 feed, including a couple all-night episodes. And then, yeah, unfortunately, I'm not able to take requests for TV recaps. If I ever am in a position to do so, I'll put it out to patrons. But it's just that, again, our planning goes so far out that it's just, and I get so many different TV requests. And again, it's like, for me, I have to watch the episodes 3 or 4 times. So I'm not able to take any TV requests, but those are cool ideas, Chris. And Chris did want to talk about, but there is an Angel Lansbury themed episode that probably came out before this episode, where I came up with the idea for Angel Lansbury Con. Originally, I thought it would be cool to cosplay at it, but then I kind of got lost on doing a history of Angela Lansbury roles, but I guess like it'd be cool to go to. I think it'd be a part of like another. Like I think that was another episode where I was like, oh, let's have some cons inside of cons. Particularly, there's just a movie with like a gaming con in there. I can't remember what movie it was. It was like video game characters. I don't know. Was it an old movie I was rewatching? It wasn't Sonic 2, but not important. Let's see. Bernie the Butterfly. Yeah, Bernie, I don't think I have any Bernie episodes recorded. Ted says, Bear with the comment on its belly, redo. Maybe you could re-release those. I thought we have re-released them before. I mean, those should all be in the patron feed. We haven't really done any redos of episodes. I've been meaning to do episode 1 redo. Probably like for patrons or something, or maybe for the free feed. So I don't know if that's something we could do eventually. And Kathy loves the Trader Joe's Fearless Flyer episodes. Yeah, those still come out in the, occasionally, like depending on the health, like, the health of the Patreon and stuff like that, on what is that thing called? Patreon, and the $10 and $20 feeds. And there's a lot in even the $5 feed. And then I might do one for the October live show. Humphrey says, catalogs are TNG. Yeah, we have the catalog episodes recorded. And then we have TNG on the schedule, but not like in the 2023 schedule, but no episodes recorded at this point. Let's see. Snow says, Ray meets someone at a theme park. Yeah, so kind of more specific episode ideas, which is hard. I'm not it's like, but yeah, Ray has met some people, had people at theme parks and had fun, have dinner together. Sounds like an early Ray episode, actually, Snow. Ray's so friendly that, he has such an easy job making, connection with other people. Let's see. L says, the personal stories. Yeah, I think we have, again, maybe I could look if I have a chance. Oh no, none of my devices will look up that, where we keep all the episodes that I've recorded. I can't look at, let's see. I want to get through all these, though. Clara says, wish for another board game unboxing. There is one recorded. I don't think it's scheduled for this year. I think it's a 2023 episode. It's it's unboxing of one game and then a bunch of stuff from another gaming company. So that's coming up. I just don't think, I don't know. There's a couple, what are we in? August? I don't know what the openings are. It could be coming out this year. Clara, sorry. Yeah. Constance says, love hearing Scooter's personal stories, but hope that no matter how much tension we hold or interest we have, we exhale and drift off into deep slumber. Thanks, Constance. Yeah, let's kind of share that wish. But I mean, it is an important reminder, like there is a percentage of people that listen to the show, and I'm glad I'm here with you right now, that can't sleep, or that need a break during the day. And that's, the show's kind of also designed with them in mind to keep everybody company. Not that you were saying that, Constance, but, if you can't sleep, I just want you to know, like, there is no pressure to fall asleep. I'm going to be here to the very end for you. And I think that helps the people that are relaxed in a deep slumber in some sense. Alexander says, personal story, be cool. Yeah, I think I've got a couple coming up. let's see, Stacy would like, this is kind of more specific, like an episode about Speed Racer, and then the one involving Count Chocula, and then both Stacy and Mars wish for peace throughout the world, and in specific places too, and sending our love to everybody in the Ukraine. Yeah, I haven't had any visits from any serial people lately, Stacy. But yeah, I have to check it out at some point. And then yeah, Speed Racer again. It's just hard for me to. It's not possible for me to take TV show suggestions. I mean, at some point, if there's like I was in a position to do so, I'd put it out to everybody. Elizabeth says another season of Odder Things or something similar. Yeah, I'd do that at some point. The first half of 2023, we have something, our new series after Nuns in Space scheduled, and I'm not sure about the back half of 2023 yet. See, Lenny or Leany says I'd like an episode featuring me out of breath with Kool-Aid on my face. It's kind of a personal story. Constantly out of breath, sharing stories. Alexander loves Trending Tuesdays. They'll still come out every third episode, Alexander. We just don't call them Trending Tuesday episodes anymore. I wish for something like the Robes Fashion Show episode. Those, I think that comes up again as with the Kuzak family. And yeah, like regular characters, they usually record 2 or 3 episodes a year. Like a Robes Fashion Show and stuff. Not sure I'm not sure if they've recorded anything. Like, I know there's a Spelling Bee episode and a Bartlett's Quotations from Nana episode. I don't know if the Kuzaks were involved in either one of those. And they may have been at one of the live shows, but I'm not sure. Again, I'm not that, yeah. Lauren would love to hear a story about Scoots as a kid in the great outdoors. Paul would like the etymology of supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Yeah, even though the sound of it is something quite atrocious. Supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. Marie would like to hear to library and talk about books. I always read before bed. Yeah, me too. Yeah. I don't know. I'd like to go to. I'm trying to get access to some of the couple different archives, but I haven't heard back from those places. And then more real-time recipe episodes. Yeah, I've ran out of recipes as a problem. And I think our writing, like, we're not in a position to pay for recipes right now. And we don't do any non-paid work for this podcast. So as I develop more recipes, I'll do more real-time recipe episodes. It's just a matter of... I don't want to use anybody else's recipes unless they're being compensated. Yeah. And this is Debbie says, yeah, Kuzak, 20-step skincare, and the robes one are some people's favorites, including Debbie's. Yeah, those are fun. Raina says, maybe a show with Antonio Banderas and Carole King as guests, more from the Boredom Institute. Yeah, I'm trying to think of the Boredom Institute. I pitched somebody on that, like a sponsor or something, or maybe we didn't. I can't remember. Didn't get, like, and the same with, we don't have any guests on the show. Even the fake guests we have, I get angry emails about, yeah. And let's see. Mary says, I don't know if I understood the prompt. Mr. Turtle pool filled with rare Beanie Babies. something specific as an element that could pop up in a show. It just did. Very random. That's how it works. I'm new here. Thanks, Mary. And thanks to everybody for your wishes. And all your wishes got into a podcast. I can't make it. I mean, I'm not really in a place to be able to make it. We don't, it's just hard with the show. Maybe you heard it because of all the distance planning we do, that we can't take episode submissions. So this was a fun way to do it, I guess, because I normally can't do it with regular episodes, but it's fun. And yeah, couldn't have made it to 11:11 without any of you. Even if you're new, the show that way, because I knew like maybe the podcast would be there waiting for somebody to discover it. Even when it was early on, it was like, you kind of as a fan, that's another thing I tell people. And I wish for you as a fan of stuff to be like, well, I want to make something. I'm a fan of this. You don't really like, have to do the same thing as what you're a fan of, but it's like, oh, I want to make this experience for someone else, for it to be waiting to be discovered. That's kind of like a wish I have for the people out there that are listening now or listening one day, that Sleep With Me is waiting for you to discover it. Hopefully, like, you feel seen and welcomed in to like a kind of virtual safe place where you could get the rest you need. You could breathe, and I can take your mind off stuff and keep you company so that you could fall asleep. It's made a lot of my wishes I never even would have known to have come true. So thank you so much, everybody. All right, I'm going to thank a couple more patrons that wrote testimonials. Sue. Podcast really does lull me to sleep like nothing else. When I can't listen at bedtime, I say the words to the intro to myself, and it triggers a relaxation response. It's crazy effective. I love your creativity and sense of humor. As a result, I go to sleep with a smile in my heart. I decided to support this podcast because I want to encourage you to keep on creating. Thank you. And when this is paraphrasing, but I feel empowered knowing I support a positive community service and that well-rested space make a world a better place. And then Lauren wrote, I've struggled with insomnia my whole life, and sleeping with me really changed the way I felt about going to bed. Something to look forward to instead of dread. I think what Scooter is doing is important and unique, and I wanted him to be able to keep doing it, so I became a patron. Hopefully I'll be able to move up a tier and pay more someday. I love the Trader Joe's episodes who lack ads. Sometimes listen with the ads, but it's not, they're not particularly intrusive, but it's nice not to have them. And I mostly subscribe because I believe in what Scooter's doing and to get rid of the ads. And it felt amazing supporting the show because I was able to help Scooter help people by keeping the podcast free for everybody. So thanks, everybody who supports the show directly and supports our sponsors. That's how we're able to be free here twice a week. And we grow as a podcast. And a free way to support the show or podcasting in general is just spread the word about the podcast. You don't have to do much more than that. Just let people know about the show. And, yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks so much. And here's a couple of Tuck You In sponsors that enabled us to grow the archives. Thanks.